The government needs to stop micromanaging private businesses and let private businesses do what they do best, which is to grow jobs. Where regulations are getting in our way, well, since Jamie Dimon works in the banking industry, it is very difficult for us to borrow money because of Dodd-Frank. We've been up and down the chain of banks. We've been trying to raise capital over a couple of years.
Business. I mean,
well, certainly aviation is part of it. Our business, the biggest problem for us growing is capital right now. The historical data clearly shows that you raise the cost of flying and you get less flying. And it's $100 now, but I'll tell you something. This business is dominated by small businesses. We live on the tipping point of success and failure every day. How much is it going to cost us to collect the $100? We're going to face extra burdens. It's a heavily regulated industry, and now we're going to have to do more paperwork, more accounting.
Welcome back to Arise Exchange. Word today that the main shooter in the Paris killings received money from al-Qaeda. So how do terrorist groups get money, arms, and resources into the hands of those who do their bidding? Larry Korb from the Center for American Progress is in Washington and back here on Arise Exchange. Good afternoon, Larry. In business today, 3 things to know. First, the interest rate game. We'll get out the Enigma machine and decode what Janet Yellen had to say in front of the Senate and whether the Fed plans any changes in policy. Welcome back to Arise Exchange. You know the names Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry when it comes to African-American media power players. But it is Byron Allen who has, some would say, been quietly leading the industry for decades. This week, though, he made a lot of noise by launching a $20 billion lawsuit against the likes of Comcast and Time Warner Cable, accusing them of systematically discriminating against minority programmers. And the suit alleges they are helped by civil rights leaders, including the Reverend Al Sharpton. Byron Allen, the CEO of Entertainment Studios, joins us now by phone to talk about this lawsuit. Byron, welcome to Arise Exchange. It's an honor to have you on the program. Boy, a 2.2 gross domestic product, that's still pretty lousy.
Yeah, generally speaking, but as you mentioned earlier, there was a revision from 2.6 to 2.2.
What's going to get us to over 3% growth, which is, I guess, the new normal for pretty good?
Special correspondent Andrew Schmertz has the story from South Dakota, part of our ongoing reporting initiative, Chasing the Dream.
Living paycheck to paycheck isn't easy. Sometimes you have to come up with creative ways to relieve the stress.
Good way to just live in denial is just throw away your bills, you know. I already got paid anyway, so.
Christy McLaughlin and her husband TJ were getting by on TJ's salary as a manufacturing plant manager here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That was until TJ got sick.
I was working the night shift and I was on my feet a lot, and I had a couple of wounds start developing on my leg, and they were pretty small at first, and then they got infected and just started growing. Ended up being short on bills. I panicked.
So McLaughlin came here, a title loan place just a few miles from his home. He says the process was simple and quick. They inspected his car and then handed him $1,200 in cash. He agreed to pay $322 a month for a year. Title loans and payday loans are supposed to be short-term quick fixes for people who can't get traditional credit.
Do you need fast cash? You've come to the right place.
They use high-energy commercials and bank-like storefronts to entice people to borrow money at triple-digit interest rates. The problem? They are rarely short-term. Borrowers frequently need to take out a second loan to pay off the first one. It's called flipping.
The average payday loan in the United States is flipped 8 times. They're a debt trap that's intentionally marketed to the financially unsophisticated, intending to lock them in on something that they can't pay back.
Former state lawmaker Steve Hickey tried to rein in the industry, which charges an average of 574% interest, with legislation to cap interest rates. But he could never get his bills out of committee. South Dakota has been the epicenter of high interest rates since the 1980s, when the state repealed laws capping rates to attract jobs from credit card companies like Wells Fargo and Citibank.
The purpose at that time was to bring in 400 Citibank jobs, not to bring in 400% interest rates.
Hickey wasn't alone in recognizing the problems created by these short-term loans. Steve Hildebrand runs Josiah's coffee shop here in Sioux Falls. He's seen the detrimental effects of these high interest rates firsthand.
I've had employee after employee after employee over the last 3 years in the coffee shop going through horrible financial experiences, taking out these emergency loans and just getting into this terrible cycle of debt that is incredibly hard for them to get out of.
Hildebrand, an openly gay Democrat who worked on the Obama campaign, didn't have much in common with Hickey, a Republican and conservative Christian pastor who has railed against homosexuality. But they did see eye to eye on what they consider predatory lending.
We created a campaign called South Dakotans for Responsible Lending. Steve and I are chair and co-chair.
They decided to use a tactic that was born right here in the Mount Rushmore state in 1898, the ballot initiative.
And you're registered to vote in South Dakota?
Yeah. Reynold Neseba is a volunteer gathering signatures to put a measure on the ballot that would do what lawmakers could not, cap interest rates on all loans at 36%. When asked about capping rates at 36%, the one payday lender who did speak with us was unequivocal.
It's a kill bill for the state. The entire lending industry would be out of business with that.
Chuck Brennan, a Sioux Falls native, is the founder and CEO of Dollar Loan Centers, a chain of more than 90 short-term lending stores with 11 locations in South Dakota.
We have a huge customer base. In South Dakota, we've had over 40,000 applicants for loans over the years. Over 20% of the state who's over 18 has applied for a loan here, which really shows there's a need for the product out there.
Further, Brennan says a rate cap will actually harm the people it's intended to help.
It isn't like when the industry goes out of business, people are going to stop needing money. They're going to have to turn to online loans, illegal sources.
After months of hard work, the campaign gathered over 20,000 signatures for Hildebrand to deliver to the Secretary of State.
Payday lenders are going to spend millions of dollars on television trying to confuse voters and, misrepresent our side.
So the fight's not over. Hildebrand has 1 year to convince South Dakotans to vote for his interest rate cap. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Andrew Schmertz in Sioux Falls, South Dakota.